Hello and welcome to News in Depth here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. NATO has unveiled a major new initiative dubbed Arctic Century aimed at strengthening the alliance's presence in the high north through large-scale exercises, increased air and naval patrols and deployments to Greenland. Russia has responded with warnings of military countermeasures and accuses NATO of turning the Arctic into a theatre of confrontation. For more on the plans announced in Brussels and the geopolitical stakes in the Arctic, we're joined by TVP World reporter Kazimierz Łysiak. Kazik, welcome and great to have you.
Hello, Ashim. Good to be here.
Well, fantastic. So let's kick off with a soundbite and then I'd like to get your view on that.
Let's do it.
Okay.
In the face of Russia's increased military activity and China's growing interest in the high north, it was crucial that we do more, which is why we have just 2 hours ago launched Arctic Century. Arctic Century leverages the strengths of the alliance by bringing together NATO and allied activities in the high north into one overarching operational approach to the region. And we continue to synchronize these and other efforts under NATO. We'll not only build our posture in the region alone, but we will also build a more cohesive picture of potential challenges in the Arctic so that any gaps can be quickly and effectively addressed.
So that was Secretary-General NATO, Mark Rutte. What do you make of his comments there? Give us a sense of what Arctic Century is about.
Well, Arctic Century, as Mark Rutte said in this quite a long conference, he actually compared it to other missions of NATO, Baltic Century, East Century. Now, this sounds, interesting, Arctic Century, kind of a cool name, but exactly what does it mean? Well, this means that NATO will be focusing more of its efforts in the region, in the Arctic. And by focusing more efforts, we are talking not only about increasing military presence, but also organizing several different exercises in the region. Now, organizing exercises is used in politics, in geopolitics, as a way to show strength. Russia is doing it, NATO is doing it. We've had several NATO exercises in Poland, so now NATO wants to do these exercises in the Arctic as well. And, well, to be honest...
Sorry, before you move on, that's great as an overview, but the other sense I got was he emphasized the cohesion in the way that countries are going to be working together in Arctic Century. Did you kind of get a sense of that as well? I mean...
Exactly. I mean, that's the main point here.
Yeah.
And the fact that all of these NATO countries will now be coordinating their efforts more under one single command, under the new JFC Norfolk. These are different branches of NATO where you have one command focused in one place, essentially. Okay. So this is what it's going to be. And actually, you know what? The best person to explain it more is Mark Rutte himself. So let's listen to another statement from Mark Rutte from that very conference, where he was asked by a journalist what exactly new will this Arctic Century mean.
Right, let's hear that.
Arctic Century, I mean, what you just mentioned there, a couple of exercises which are already being planned. So,
what is really new about it is that for the first time now, we will bring everything we do in the Arctic together under one command. And by doing that, and we have seen the same in the Baltic region, we have seen the same when it comes to Eastern Century, we will not only be able to leverage what we are doing much more effectively and having a bigger impact, we will also be able to assess which gaps there are, which we have to fill, and of course we will fill them. But it will also bring into this whole equation the help of our Allied Command transformation. There's the latest technologies. We have seen this in the Baltic Sea when it comes to securing our critical undersea infrastructure, but also when it comes to Eastern Century, where not only the aim was to bring together in a much more effective and in a leveraging way what we are doing on the eastern flank, but also to make sure that we are better in countering the drones, but also becoming more effective in using the latest drone technologies ourselves, learning from Ukraine.
Okay, so that's pretty clear. But what were your main takeaways from what he just said? Because I have a couple of thoughts as well.
Well, essentially what he means here is that we're going to focus our efforts to make it more interoperable, right? So we're going to have these different nations in the Arctic. We're not only talking about the big powers here, the United States, Russia, and now China also looking in, but also we have all these European countries. We have Norway, we have Finland, we have Denmark through its autonomous territory of Greenland, which of course was a big topic as well in the Arctic recently. We have Iceland as well. So, all of these countries have their own militaries, they have their own chain of command. Then they have to, of course, coordinate with NATO. But essentially what I'm taking away from this is that, okay, we are hearing pressure from the United States that we need to focus on the Arctic security more. And one way of doing it is creating this new command in the north, which will allow for a more focused approach to the area, so as not to give it away to some other NATO branches. Let's just do one NATO branch, which is going to deal with the Arctic.
Right. Okay. Now he mentioned Baltic Sentry, for example, which really was put in place to protect the undersea cables, right, to protect communication channels. Is there an equivalent in Arctic Sentry?
Well, I'm not sure, in the sense of the underwater infrastructure.
Well, in terms of an overriding objective.
Right. Here's the thing. When it comes to the objectives in the Arctic, it's difficult to define them exactly. I mean, there are various threats which are defined. This is, for example, the Russian shadow fleet, which we are also seeing in the Baltic. So here we have this overlap. I mean, we are looking to counter this Russian shadow fleet. It's posing a threat not only to the nations in the north of Europe, but also they are posing environmental concerns. We are talking about these old decommissioned tankers that Russia is using to circumvent sanctions. So we are seeing more of them sailing through the Arctic as the ice caps are melting. So climate change is coming into here as a factor as well, which is opening up these new trade routes. Russia and China is looking into those. So essentially NATO is saying with this Arctic Sentry, okay, we are seeing that you are interested in this. We are seeing that you're putting more and more ships in the area, so we're going to increase our presence here with patrols like in Baltic Sentry, and this is going to be acting as a deterrent to Russia and to China to show that we are not forgetting about the Arctic. We are very much here.
Okay, now, I don't think I'm alone, have always had the impression that NATO has always had an outpost on the Arctic, or in the Arctic Circle. But clearly this is a much more comprehensive strategic response. Why now? Why the shift?
Well, this shift comes from several different factors. One biggest factor, I would say, is US President Donald Trump. I mean, his threats towards Greenland first have kind of put the attention back to the Arctic, but also the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And that has, again, showed to the world that, we need to take a look at security in different places in the world, that maybe, these places where we used to cooperate together will no longer be the case. And the Arctic is the prime example of that, of the area which used to be this area of unprecedented international coordination and cooperation. It was meant to be left alone as this pristine, icy realm where we are conducting scientific research. And actually, I was just in Norway just now for the Arctic Circle conference, Arctic Frontiers. It's a conference where various leaders and experts on the Arctic come together to discuss the future for the region. And we actually had a chance to speak there with the former US ambassador at large to the Arctic, who served at this role during the Joe Biden presidency. So he had a very interesting point to make. Let's listen to that.
Let's have a listen.
I think the age of innocence is over. This idea of exceptionalism, Arctic exceptionalism, which stated that no matter what was happening outside of the Arctic, the 8 Arctic nations were sort of insulated from the ripples of big geopolitics. That clearly, that age is over.
Age of innocence is over. I love that expression. What does he mean?
Well, he used also another word, exceptionalism. This is the term Arctic exceptionalism, is exactly what I've just mentioned, this idea that we are here in this land of cooperation. It's very similar to space, actually. This agreement between these major global superpowers, the United States, Russia, China, that, you know what, this is too important for all of humanity for us to ruin this. So let's coordinate, let's cooperate. And whatever happens in geopolitics, we just kind of push it aside in this area. But it now seems like this is over, and this is coming not only from the former US ambassador, but we've seen very strong statements from officials like European leaders, Emmanuel Macron, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, at the recent Davos summit in Switzerland, where they were saying, you know, the world is changing. It's no longer what it used to be. Donald Trump is introducing this approach of hard power politics back to the global stage. And this is really making everyone rethink their approach to some spaces. Now, when it comes to space, this cooperation remains. I think it's, you know, too big of a danger for countries in space to fight with each other. But the Arctic, well, that's a bit of a different case. We are seeing all these major superpowers now saying, you know what, this used to be an area of cooperation, but now with the ice caps melting, with this new trade route opening, with Donald Trump speaking about taking Greenland, we kind of maybe have to reassess here, and there is some interest that we have to take care of in the Arctic. The Arctic also has a lot of raw materials, for example, so that's also another important factor here that everyone is eyeing now, and the United States and China and in Europe as well are looking into this, like, you know, we have these raw materials here, maybe we should start bringing in the military first to secure it, and then maybe, you know, extract these minerals, which was unthinkable until recently.
Yes, it does make one wonder. I mean, the Arctic is not a small place, and it's, you know, trying to secure a continent. It's going to pose some challenges. The other thing, of course, is that, as you said, you know, the ice is melting, ship routes have opened up, which have dramatically shortened journeys from Asia to America, for example. And that's going to change the whole kind of transportation and logistics infrastructure as well. So a lot going on. Now, you mentioned Donald Trump and Greenland. What's the American component of these exercises? And I mean, what's Trump planning on doing in Greenland?
So the United States is going to be part of Arctic Sentry for sure, in big way. I mean, Arctic Sentry will kick off with two exercises, one in Norway, where we just went to. So I spoke with some of these soldiers from the Norwegian army, and they told me, yeah, we're going to have a big NATO exercise soon in the north of Norway, which is actually part of the Arctic Circle. What you said, that the Arctic is a big place, it's a big region, that's very true. It's very different in some places. You know, we have the North American Arctic, we have the Russian Arctic, then we have the European Arctic, and Norway is part of that Arctic Circle. So they're going to have the exercises called Cold Response, and it's going to include some 30,000 NATO troops from more than 14 nations. The United States is going to be a big part of that. And I spoke with some of the Americans actually during my stay in Norway at a military base, and I asked them, why are you coming here to Norway? I mean, you have the Arctic in your backyard as well. And they said, yes, but this land, this territory, is actually different here in Norway, in Europe, than it is in Alaska, for example. So they are coming over to Norway specifically to be trained by the Norwegians on how to operate, how to fight in these harsh tundra conditions. Yeah. So that's quite interesting. They're learning how to, for example, how to act in the cold climate of the tundras. Like, for example, how the soldiers react to the cold, but also what if their IVs freeze, for example, so like fluid for medical purposes.
Right.
So there is
or fuel for
exactly fuel mechanical. As well. Yeah. So they're learning a lot. The Americans are learning from Europeans as well.
Right.
And now you ask me how will the US factor into this? Well, the United States is clearly saying that Europe needs to do more. right, in order to bring in more to the security of not only Europe, but also the Arctic. And the Arctic Century seems to be NATO's response, and Mark Rutte's response a little bit as well to Trump, saying, okay, we hear you, you're saying we need more security in the Arctic, they're making this deal on Greenland where the US will be having a bigger presence on Greenland. So NATO is saying, okay, we hear you, we're going to invest more in the security.
And here's an example. It's a very big example, isn't it? Now, you touched on Russia and China earlier. As perhaps is not surprising, Russia's not particularly happy with what's going on. And we have a soundbite from the Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, which I'd like to share with you and then get your view on that.
Of course, in case Greenland is militarized and military capabilities aimed at Russia are created, we will take adequate countermeasures, including military and technical ones. Nevertheless, our fundamental position is that the Arctic must remain a zone of peace and cooperation.
Peace and cooperation is the Russian preference. What do you think?
Well, they're saying we prefer peace and cooperation, but of course this is coming from the foreign minister of the country, which has been waging the biggest war in Europe since the Second World War in Ukraine. So again, some heavy-handed irony from the Russian foreign minister. But, it is interesting that this actually was preceded by kind of a threat. By saying, okay, but Greenland is, we're seeing that the United States wants to increase its presence in Greenland, NATO wants to increase its presence in Greenland, so we're going to do the same. So this is, again, coming back to this idea of this Arctic exceptionalism being over, this age being really over. We're seeing this region becoming truly more and more tense. If one side is saying we're going to bring in more military, the other side is saying we're going to bring in more military, well, then it's only leading to a bigger and bigger military buildup. We are looking at something similar to the Cold War, actually.
So some kind of arms race in the Arctic, and of course race for minerals and so on that exists there. Do we have any idea of what the level of Russian military presence there was in the Arctic before all this happened?
So Russia always had a big presence in the Arctic, and there is one good reason for it. It's actually the shortest distance to reach the United States with nuclear missiles. So from the Arctic, from the Russian Arctic, it's the closest to reach American cities, American targets. So that's why it's always been an area where both the United States and Russia and Europe and other superpowers were looking into, because they were like, oh, okay, like this is actually a strategic location. So now they are increasing their presence for sure. There's some satellite pictures which are proving that Russia is actually increasing its military presence. But to what extent exactly, it's difficult to tell, because Russia is actually deploying a lot of submarines in the region, in the Arctic, nuclear-capable submarines. The United States is doing the same, naturally. So that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump is actually so invested in Greenland in the first place. It's because this is the place where Russia would be launching these nuclear missiles to go over. So one of the things that Trump has been saying about Greenland is to have this part of this golden dome, which he is calling. It would be this shield against any nuclear missiles, similar to the Iron Dome in Israel.
And that would be based in Greenland.
Yeah, that's the idea. He wants to put anti-missile systems in Greenland in order to be able to intercept anything coming from Russia.
Which, again, is something the Russians are not particularly happy about. Unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there, Kazimierz, but come back and see us soon, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of this episode of News in Depth. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.